Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Hello, happy Monday. We are going totally profesh today. I'm going to do a presentation and I wanted to speak to people who have vestibular disorders. A lot of times I talk about sobriety, I talk about stroke recovery, but I like to talk about my vestibular disorder and make sure that I am able to reach people who may be suffering from similar disorders. And so, to be clear, I had a stroke that led to my vestibular disorder. However, there are various ways that you can achieve a vestibular disorder. Most people that I've run across got their vestibular disorder through something wrong within their ear. So there's a central vestibular cause and a peripheral vestibular cause. So we'll just get started. So this presentation was created based on an article that I read. And that article was written by Michael C. Schubert, PT, PhD, and others. And the article is available at vestibularorg.com. When I had my stroke, I was in the hospital for about 5 days. And when I did, I was experiencing some vision issues and a headache. And I couldn't really describe what was happening at that time. But over the course of like going home and trying to get back to my normal life, I noticed that I can't tolerate things that move. I can't tolerate seeing things that moved. And what that caused for me was like, it felt like I had a rubber band wrapped around my head. And the more I was exposed to things that moved, that I just more rubber bands kept being added to my head and squeezing tighter and tighter. That's what it felt like. But there are various vision complaints that people have who are experiencing a vestibular disorder of some kind. So difficulty focusing, mine, a perception of moving objects, and they call it vertigo, even though it doesn't feel like that classic vertigo where the crystals in your ears are like off and the room is spinning. That's not what mine feels like, even though they call it vertigo. That version of vertigo has a specific name, BPPV, and I don't expect you to remember that, but there's all different kinds of vertigo feelings. So there's also bouncing or jiggling vision, which is oscillopsia. There's double vision, and some symptoms may happen, like you feel the symptoms even when your head is still. You don't even need to move your head. For me, I get more symptoms when I move my head. When I move my head, it almost feels like I have a concussion. It doesn't almost feel like that. It does. It feels like I have a permanent concussion. That's what I feel like from my stroke. So the natural, response to having vision complaints is to go to the eye doctor, right? So I went to, you name the eye doctor, and I went to see him or her. No, they were all hims. So all the eye exams that I took missed it. They told me there is nothing wrong with your vision system. So I did the typical eye exams where you're looking at, trying to focus on things, you're seeing things merge and unmerge. I do have to say, for me, when you are doing the eye exam where you can see two of something and they say, let me know when they converge into one, that was extremely painful. Like I had a very painful sensation in my head when the two items became one. Very odd, I know. And then when they broke apart again into two, again, I felt some really uncomfortable pain in my head. So, as strange as that is, they said that I have a convergence issue and they left it at that. That is not all that was wrong with me. And that can be really frustrating. Believe me, I went through several years of doctors telling me, "Meh, I don't know what's wrong with you." So the symptoms can be masked during exams, and your problems, even though it feels visual, may not show up as that something is wrong with your eye system. I took all of the tests from like looking in the machine and like the bright lights show up and you have to click the button every time you see a bright light. I took all of the stuff, all of the things, and they said that there was nothing wrong with my vision system. I think I ended up going to at least four vision doctors of all sorts, and I might have even gone to five in during that time. So what I was told at a couple of the doctors was to go to vision therapy, and so I I did it for a little while. I went to vision therapy at one of them, and I did it. Gosh, I think it was once a week. I think, and it was almost like when I'm trying to think of an example, what it felt like was that I was like in preschool and you have like all these stations set up and you get to play games. That's what it felt like. So I didn't necessarily dislike the playing games part, but there were quite a few games that triggered and worsened my symptoms. So we did things like I would sit still and they would turn this wheel on, and the wheel would spin extremely slowly, as slow as they could make it spin. And my job was to track one spot around while it moved around. And I had these little pegs, and I had to put the pegs in the holes while the device was spinning, and that was nauseating, as well as many other things that were nauseating. I got to play some card games and some memory games, some stuff that I do remember playing in elementary school, and the point was to practice my ability to ingest what I was looking at, as well as track what I was looking at to see if bright colors bothered me. Like they really test the gambit. But the problem for me was that it always triggered my symptoms. My symptoms always got worse and nothing got better, ever. They never got better. That is not the result that I heard from many other people who have taken vision therapy, but for me, it did not help me. The neuro-optometric rehab did not help me, nor did the vision therapy. And they are a little different, what I experienced. But I went to I went to two vision therapists, and then I went to a vestibular therapist. And the vision therapy was very different than the vestibular therapy. And I did actually see some positive results from vestibular therapy, mostly not being so scared to move my head and to move my body and to they gave me practical ways to apply some of the exercises in real life. Like, how do I find the spice I'm looking for in the spice rack without getting nauseous? That would be a perfect example. So, VOR and visual stability. So, what it feels like for me is that my brain no longer understands what movement is. That's what it's like my eyes and my brain have stopped talking to each other. So, our stability is based on lots of different factors. And going back to the crystals in your ears, sorry, I heard a sound and I was like, what is that? It was my chimes out, my wind chimes outside. Anyway, the crystals in your ears are just one of them. But your vision is another thing that you rely on for balance. When we're looking on in the distance, that helps me to not get nauseous. So there are ways to adapt to things like intolerance to movement. Being able to keep my eyes stable while I'm moving is very helpful. So when I'm like outside walking, I look really far ahead of me at something, and that helps me to focus on that object and not so much notice all the things that are coming at me when I'm moving. And anybody who doesn't have this disorder, it might sound really bizarre, but when I'm walking forward, the ground and everything else is moving at me. And it's something that I mean, obviously, that's what's happening, but I never noticed it before. It never bothered me. It was something that just happens and you ignore it. Well, now that I have this vestibular disorder, something like walking down a grocery aisle can be absolutely overwhelming. It's like I'm walking through a funhouse tunnel if I'm going through a grocery aisle. So, this reliance on vision is something that my brain has kind of had to like pull away from a little bit or adjust in order to not get nauseous, not to feel some of the symptoms that I feel. So, what's the vestibular system? So, like I said, there's the crystals in your ears. There's these hair cells in your ears. Like, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I had no idea. And when any single one of those is affected, you can have what's called a vestibular disorder. I never even heard of the word vestibular before this happened to me. But as soon as something is affected, your perception of the world around you just gets completely screwy. So there are some people in my vestibular support group who always feel like they're on a boat. I do not have that. There are some people who can still drive, some people who cannot, like me. I can't tolerate watching TV. I can't tolerate running, riding my bike, doing things where there is a constant movement. I have heard of people that have something similar to me, and they have been able to get back on the bike and just ride through it until the nausea goes away. I'm not willing to do that. So it's all about what works for you. So the effects of a disrupted vestibular system, there are lots of different things, like I said, jerking eye movement. So I have that when I'm trying to focus on something, my eyes will jet away from what I'm looking at. And what it feels like is my brain's just too tired to stay focused, and it just goes whoop and looks away. That's called nystagmus. And I have on and off been diagnosed with nystagmus over the course of the last 4 years. One thing has been consistent, and that is my headache and my intolerance to movement. But over the course, I've had different doctors that test me for nystagmus, and that's when they put the finger in front of your face and they move it back and forth and up and down. Um, that makes me nauseous when they do it. I tell them, please don't move it really fast. So, anyway, some of them notice that my eye jerks away and some of them don't. It really depends on how triggered my vestibular system is at the moment that they do the test. Because my brain, just like anything else we do, can get tired after a ride to the doctor's office. Like, how far was the ride to the doctor's office? That's going to make a difference in my test results. Other things I mentioned, oscillopsia, vertigo, which can look very different. It can be disorienting, dizzy, the room is spinning. I've heard of people who've had such terrible vertigo that they just start throwing up, and it lasts a long time. And that's very scary to me. I have not had that happen for a long period of time. However, I have had when my brain gets really, really tired, the room will start spinning depending on my position, mostly if I lay down. That doesn't happen on a regular basis. It's just, like I said, depending on what I'm feeling when the test is done. And then there's something that I experience. This is probably what I call a 9 out of 10 is drop syndrome. And that is when all of a sudden it feels like my brain is like a TV and somebody just turned it off. And it's like, it's so hard to explain. I'm just keep making physical like demonstrations of what it feels like. So if you're not looking at the screen, that's not going to help you. But I've had it happening when I was sitting down, and it feels like the earth just fell out from under my feet. It feels like it feels like the internet went down, in my head, like the connection dropped. That's what it feels like. So that's my most scary feeling that I have. Unfortunately, I have had it quite a few times over the past few years, and that is like when I have gone way, way too far. I call it a 9 out of 10 because a 10 out of 10 would be me actually falling to the ground, and that hasn't happened, luckily, yet for me. So, the visual sensitivities that I experience, the whole world moves. So anything that moves is what hurts my head. I really try my best on a, daily basis to remove as much visual overload as possible. So I stay in the house a lot. I do take my dogs for walks, and I do things, but it's very controlled because I can only tolerate a certain amount of movement for a certain amount of time. Bright and flickering lights are a big no-go for me. I have these glasses and I have two other pairs that I use depending on where I am and how bad or bright the lights are. Migraines, I take Emgality. It's an injection once a month, and that takes the edge off of my sharp pains in my head. Um, these visual sensitivities will trigger that sharp pain depending on the length of time that I'm exposed. I just had the pain yesterday because there were too many bright lights around me, and I didn't notice it until I started feeling the pain, and then I had to turn out the lights and take care of myself. Another thing that I'm very sensitive to is patterns. So if I'm in a store and they have a pattern on the floor or a carpet, I was at a friend's house the other day and they had a pattern on their carpet, it makes me nauseous. It's very strange. And it just makes me feel unstable. So, those are some of the examples. Things that are in rows. For example, if I'm going up a stairwell and there are banisters going up the left and right hand side, and then maybe there's banisters that you can see through and you can see something underneath it, if you know what I mean, like out, say for example, a stairwell outdoors, all of that, the all the patterns of the banister, the metal banister and all of that is just, it's too much. I will take the elevator instead. So there's always some way that I try to accommodate my symptoms. Reading and motion. So, I spend a lot of time with my eyes closed because that is the one thing that is guaranteed relief when I shut my eyes. So the longer that that I'm exposed to something moving my eyes. Okay, let's talk about moving my eyes versus seeing things move. So if I'm trying to read, which I say I can't do anymore, I can read. I can read. But it's very difficult for me to read at the level I used to read, and especially read out loud. That's really difficult because my eyes will skip over the words and the text seems to like move and blur. And honestly, like I will just not see words. So it's just really, really difficult for me to read. Scrolling screens and flickering monitors, that is really difficult for me. So, social media is my worst nightmare, but I'm a sucker for punishment. I try really hard to restrict myself, but ta-da! Now I have a dog behind me all of a sudden out of nowhere. So I needed to go get my stew out of the oven, and now I'm back and there is, and I cut that part out of the video and now Autumn's here. So hello, it's magic. Okay, think about spending your whole life with the internet and a computer and a phone and all of these wonderful devices, and then one day all of a sudden they're all taken away. It's hard to not do it. If my vision was taken away entirely, I would imagine it might be a little easier to manage, just because I don't have a choice. You know, I wouldn't have a choice to look at screens and monitors. However, I do have the choice. And so this is a real practice of restraint that I work on a daily basis. And as you can see, I still try to do the best I can with what I can. And I am able to do a lot still, what I can do versus what I can't do, possibilities versus limitations. So I try to embrace possibilities, and that's why we're here doing this. So um, let's see, difficulty. So there's different difficulties that I have. There are too many to name really, but like looking over my shoulder, like straining my eyes, looking up really far, looking down really far. These are things that they help you with in vision therapy, but they've never gone away. The challenges have never gone away. I just know when I'm gonna look at something to look like don't strain my eyes, more look to that direction and then turn my head. So I use a lot more head movement than I think we normally do, at least me before I had my stroke. So I'm more comfortable navigating life because of vestibular therapy. I'm being completely honest. Vestibular therapy did not make my symptoms go away. They allowed me to live life despite my vestibular disability. So I don't completely avoid motion. I expose myself in small batches to motion. I stimulate those symptoms ever so slightly to make sure that I'm always pushing myself forward. Most vestibular disorders are treatable, but many of them, honestly, many of them that I have run across as a peer in recovery are not curable. And this is the hard part. This is the hard part. The acceptance, because they sometimes just happen just like that. Even if you didn't have a stroke that caused your vestibular disorder, for many people it just happens just like that. And it's hard to have your life change just like that, without any warning. Um, and then to have to be told, look, this is not curable. It's treatable, but it's not curable, is is scary, and it's very difficult to accept. So that's the reason why I like to come back to talking about vestibular disorders. Because with proper therapy, vestibular therapy, maybe vision therapy would work for you, significant relief is possible. I did have significant relief from going to my vestibular therapist for several months. I went to a vestibular therapist for about 6 months, and I did have significant relief. But for me, that relief was fear. I was relieved from fear, and I was given the tools so that I knew how to navigate certain situations. What my therapist shared with me was when you go to a grocery store and you need to walk down the aisle to get your package of cookies, you can look at the roast beef all the way at the end of the aisle and just set your targets on that while you walk down the aisle. And that will help you ignore all of this busyness on the left and the right side of you. So she taught me how to do that. She taught me how to use an earlier example, find a spice in my spice cabinet. And the way that she had me do that was rather than browsing, sliding my eyes from one object to the next, um, I I purposefully jump my eyes from one to the next. So because I can't tolerate things that move or eye movement, that means when for example, if I'm like watching a car drive by, that's the same eye movement as browsing the spice drawer. Okay. So instead of that, what I do is I'm looking at the cloves. Okay. And then I think to myself, I'm going to look at the time. Ours is in alphabetical order so that I know that I can look down and to the right where the time is and move my eyes, jump my eyes over there to the time bottle and then move my head. That's one of the other ways that my vestibular therapist taught me how to adapt. So, what can you do if you think you might have a vestibular disorder? If some of this stuff resonated with you, there's a lot of answers, and I didn't know that when I first entered into this world of vestibular disorders. So, one thing that I want to share with you is vestibular.org. That is the Vestibular Disorders Association, and there is just a plethora of resources there on that website. What can you do for your own physical health? I would recommend, and I'm not a doctor, I'm just a peer in recovery, and I can share with you what has worked for me. So, start off with your primary care physician. Let them know what's going on. They're going to do physical exams. There's going to be a lot of tests, a lot of tests, a lot of physical exams. And you will likely need to see a plethora of eye doctors as well. But I would recommend going over and seeing a ENT, ear, nose, and throat gal or guy. That ENT will do the necessary tests for, they'll start with your hearing. And this, for some people, actually, they have a problem with their hearing that is because of their vestibular disorder. I shouldn't say I don't. I do have like a symptom that is caused by hearing loud noises. That will hurt my head also, but I think it's really just, imagine having a migraine and then somebody starts clanging on a pan or a plate or something like that. Like that's gonna hurt no matter what. So going to the ENT, they're gonna do the hearing tests and stuff, but then they will also do what is like a balance test for you. And if they feel that there might be something there, then they can prescribe an ENG or VNG test. So on this slide, there's a lot of different names of what these tests are, but they do different things that the purpose of them is to actually induce symptoms. And it's not comfortable, but it's a good test to get down to what's actually going on, whether it's in your brain or in your ears. And the specialist for vestibular disorders is called a neuro-otologist. And I did finally go to a neuro-otologist. For me, because my vestibular disorder is caused by a stroke, there was no resolution after that. I did have some other things going on that surfaced in the VNG test, but everything that's really addressable at all was caused by my stroke. And once again, I had to go back to that acceptance that, yes, my stroke changed my life forever, and this is my disability. My disability is a vestibular disorder. It's very much like triple PD and PPPD. And I don't know, like the ENT said that I likely have triple PD. But then when I went to the neuro-otologist and I went to get the VNG test, they didn't say anything about triple PD. It's like they all just went back to, well, you had a stroke. And that was it. That was their answer. Well, you had a stroke. Like, okay, and are you going to do something about it? So, depending on your age, your medications, sleep habits, all of these things can have a major effect on your vestibular system. And that's something that will be discussed with your doctors as well. So, here are again some of the treatment approaches. One of the things that I did that was super beneficial was journaling and rating my symptoms on a 1 to 10 scale daily. So, what I would do is I literally wrote down the time of day and every single thing I did for a couple weeks. And as much as that can be kind of tiring and frustrating, it was really helpful in starting to identify because my symptoms occur about 5 minutes after I trigger them. Like I feel them about 5 minutes after I do something that triggers them. And it was hard for me to figure out what was going on. So I used this journal to write down, okay, at this time, I back then I was still on computers and phones. So I would say like from 11 o'clock to 11:15, I was on my computer working. And then I laid down from 11:15 to 11:20. At 11:20, I felt extremely nauseous and my headache heightened to a 8 out of 10, that kind of thing. So I took really good notes about what was going on, and that started to lead me to some answers. How can I manage? How can I adapt in my daily life? So, vestibular therapy, vision therapy, I have tried all kinds of medications till I got to the point where I made a decision for myself that I did not want to be a guinea pig any longer for all these doctors to try medications on me. You know, here, try this. Maybe your headache will go away. Try this, try this. Because they weren't working. None of them were working. The only thing that finally gave me some relief was Emgality. And but I've heard that only works for some people and it doesn't work for others. It's really a mystery, honestly. Diet, I did go vegan for a year, hoping that that might address my headache, but it didn't do anything to my headache. Some people need to resort to surgery. I do not have that option. There's nothing that they could open me up and do in order to fix things. So, coping strategies. Some days I shut all the shades in my house, and other days I can tolerate having them open. Most days now I have them open. In the beginning, I had all the shades shut, and I wore these FL41 glasses all day as well. Over time, And this is what I heard, that the longer that I take Emgality, the more it will improve my tolerance. So I have been able to leave the shades open. Most days I don't wear my FL41 glasses around the house. Some days I do, but very rarely now do I. I used to actually have the side peripheral blockers on the sides of my glasses because the less that I could see, the better. So they say, meaning doctors, say not to do that because you want to continue to train yourself to tolerate things like your peripheral vision. That's fine and good. In the beginning, I could not, and I was not willing. And that goes back to like, what are you willing to do to get better? What's your tolerance level? In the beginning, I could only tolerate seeing things straight in front of me and seeing those things move. Over time, I was able to take those blockers off and start tolerating the whole picture, literally the whole picture around me. I still have a hard time. For example, right now I'm moving my hands in my peripheral vision. That bothers me a lot, so I'm going to stop doing that. So it's really situational for me. Some things that I can do to cope with a difficult time is to focus on one stable, distant object. I like to keep myself in consistent lighting, and most of the time I'm in the house and the overhead lights are off. At nighttime, when my husband and I are watching TV, he's watching TV, I'm listening to TV. I'm faced away from the TV, and then we have certain lights in the house that bother me and some don't. So I just adjust those for what's best for me. He is so accommodating and loving so that I can do that. And then I make sure that all of my eye movements are intentional. And I'm still practicing that over the years that I've been dealing with this. So that is what I have for you on vestibular disorders. This is my experience. I just want to stress that. This is my experience. And I just wanted to reach out and, and let anyone know who's suffering from any of these symptoms that I'm here if you have questions. So you can reach out to me at rachel@recoverydailypodcast.com. But I really, really, really encourage you to check out vestibular.org. And there's so much helpful information there. There's actually a vestibular disorders event going on at the beginning of March. And March? Yeah, at the beginning of March. And you can connect, build your network, and start finding answers for yourself. The answers for me existed at vestibular.org, so I couldn't promote them enough. I'm one of the ambassadors for VITA, and I just encourage you to at least go out and take a look at some of the articles. The vestibular event that's coming up, there's a portal. You can log in, you can ask people questions. They're going to have live seminars and the like. So you can start to at least navigate, try to find your answers for you. So thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time.